There are moments in life when injustice wraps itself around you like a heavy cloak, moments when betrayal cuts deeper than any blade, when the ones you loved the most become the ones who wound you the fiercest. You look around, searching for answers, your heart whispering the questions your lips dare not speak. Does God see this? Does He know how deeply I've been hurt? Will He do anything about it? My friend, let me tell you something that few will dare to say out loud, but what your spirit already knows. God sees it all. Not a tear escapes His notice. Not a wound inflicted on your soul is ignored by the one who formed you with His own hands. Even in the silence, even when it seems like heaven itself is still, God is moving. He is dealing with those who dared to hurt His precious child. But the dealings of God are rarely loud. They do not often arrive with thunder and lightning for the world to see. They are more often whispered in the night, felt in the quiet unraveling of the arrogant, and witnessed in the slow but sure crumbling of prideful hearts. God's justice is patient, it is precise, it is certain. You might not see it immediately. The apology you deserve may never come from their lips. The acknowledgement of the pain they caused may never cross their hardened hearts. But justice isn't always about human words or confessions. Sometimes it's about what God allows to unfold behind the scenes. Sometimes it's about the lessons He engraves into the lives of those who wronged you. Have you ever wondered why certain people who once seemed so untouchable now walk burdened with troubles? Why the ones who laughed at your suffering now carry invisible weights they cannot shake? Why the doors they once slammed in your face now seem to slam back in theirs? Could it be, just maybe, that God has picked up your cause? Could it be that the battle you thought you lost was actually a seed planted for a greater victory? That the sorrow you endured was the soil in which God's justice is now blossoming? That while you wept in the night, the heavenly courts were already in session? And maybe, just maybe, God is not only dealing with those who hurt you, but He's elevating you in the process. He is teaching you that vengeance is not yours to carry. He is showing you that your peace is a far greater revenge than their punishment, that your elevation is the loudest answer to every whispered insult. But here's the real beauty. God's dealings are not fueled by hatred. They are born from a fierce love for you and a righteous desire for truth to prevail. His ways are higher. His judgments are perfect. He knows how to dismantle the prideful without staining your hands with bitterness. He knows how to bring justice without stealing your peace. So if you are wondering today, is God working behind the scenes? Is He dealing with those who wounded my heart and took advantage of my kindness? Then stay with me. Because there are signs, unmistakable signs, that reveal God is already moving in your favor. You just need the eyes to see them, and once you recognize these signs, your heart will stop fighting for revenge. You'll learn to rest, to heal, to rise, because God's justice is not just about bringing them down, it's about lifting you up. Their plans begin to crumble unexpectedly. There is something hauntingly powerful about the silent undoing of those who conspired against you. At first, their plans seemed untouchable, fortified by arrogance, sealed with deception, and emboldened by the belief that there would be no consequences. You watched them move confidently, wielding their cruelty like a weapon, smiling while planting seeds of pain in your life. And perhaps you wondered in those moments if their wickedness would go unanswered. The great author of justice was writing a story unseen by human eyes. Slowly, surely, and without fanfare, their plans began to crack. It doesn't always happen with grand gestures or public humiliation. Often, it begins with small, almost invisible setbacks. A misstep here, a faltering alliance there. Deals they were confident in fall apart at the last minute. Relationships they manipulated start to erode without obvious cause. Goals they once reached with ease now slip through their fingers, leaving behind the bitter taste of frustration and confusion. What they built on foundations of lies begins to collapse, because no structure can stand when truth is not its cornerstone. And here's the mystery: they cannot explain it. They will blame circumstances, other people, even bad luck, but deep down, something gnaws at their spirit. They begin to sense that there is a greater hand moving against them, a silent force they cannot fight or manipulate. It is the slow erosion of false success, the unraveling of schemes that were crafted in the shadows. They are left bewildered, trying harder, grasping for control, but the more they strive, the faster the collapse comes. This is not revenge, it is divine correction. It is God's hand ensuring that what was meant to harm you cannot prosper. He dismantles the weapons formed against you, not with noise, but with undeniable precision. And as their plans crumble, a new chapter is being written, not one fueled by your anger, but by God's righteous design. So, if you notice that those who hurt you are now stumbling over the very stones they once threw at you, know this: God is not mocked. What is sown must eventually be reaped. And sometimes the first sign that He is dealing with them is the silent, unstoppable collapse of their proudest plans. They face unexplainable obstacles and delays. When God steps into a situation, the natural order bends to His will. Doors that once opened easily for the proud suddenly refuse to budge. Opportunities that once flowed toward them without effort now dry up like rivers in a barren desert. No matter how hard they push, how strategically they maneuver, or how loudly they demand, progress evades them like a shadow in the dark. It is not coincidence. It is not misfortune. It is the invisible hand of divine justice, erecting barriers they cannot climb, walls they cannot tear down. Obstacles become their new normal. Every path they walk feels heavier, harder, more uncertain. The clarity they once boasted is replaced with confusion. Decisions that used to be instinctive now breed hesitation and fear. They face resistance not just from others, but from life itself. Deals collapse at the last minute, trusted friends back away, opportunities vanish just as they reach for them. It is as though the universe itself has turned against them, and in truth it has, because the one who governs the universe has seen the affliction they caused. This kind of divine resistance is both merciful and terrifying. It is mercy because it offers them a chance to reflect, to repent, to turn from their ways. But it is terrifying because if pride blinds them from seeing the opportunity to change, the obstacles only grow taller, the delays stretch longer, and the journey becomes more agonizing. If what they experience outwardly, the resistance, the failures, the rejections, is only a faint echo of the inner chaos beginning to stir within their own hearts. And still, they may try to act as if nothing is wrong. They may mask their struggles with bravado or blame everyone else for their misfortunes. But beneath the surface, anxiety grows, doubt festers, shame begins to whisper in the quiet places of their mind. Because no matter how they dress it up, they know something has shifted. The favor they once walked in, whether genuine or fabricated, is gone, and the harder they strive to recreate it by human means, the more they find themselves entangled in failure. This too is God's doing, for when the proud refuse to acknowledge their wrongs, God allows life to become a mirror reflecting their brokenness back to them until they can no longer deny it. And if you see them encountering obstacle after obstacle, delay after delay, understand this: God is not idle. He is active, and He is dealing with them not out of cruelty, but out of an unrelenting commitment to uphold justice. Their relationships start to fall apart. When the foundation of a person's life is built on manipulation, deceit, and betrayal, it is only a matter of time before the cracks begin to show, not just in their personal pursuits, but within the very circle they thought would protect them. Those who hurt you often thrive on alliances, gathering others around them to validate their wrongdoings and mask their guilt. For a time, it appears as if they are untouchable, propped up by the applause of friends, co-workers, or even family members who are blind to their true nature. But when God begins to deal with such a person, the unraveling starts where it hurts them the most. In their relationships, conversations that once flowed effortlessly now breed tension and suspicion. Trust begins to erode like sand under a relentless tide. Misunderstandings multiply. Conflicts flare over the smallest provocations. Those who once defended them without question now pause, second guess, and step back. Loyalty turns into distance. Friendship turns into wary tolerance. Love turns into resentment. It is a slow, almost imperceptible process at first, but it accelerates as God removes the veils from people's eyes. You may witness their carefully built image crumble without any public spectacle. They may post the same smiling pictures, speak the same confident words, but the loneliness behind their eyes grows undeniable. Relationships that were once their safety net become strained, frayed, and ultimately severed. One by one, they are left to stand alone, forced to confront the truth they fought so hard to suppress. You cannot harm another's soul and expect your own soul to remain. And it is not because people suddenly became disloyal to them. It is because the spirit of division they sowed outwardly begins to bear fruit inwardly. What they inflicted on others now mirrors itself in their own connections. God, in His wisdom, knows how to dismantle false alliances without a single word of gossip or retaliation on your part. He simply allows the rot they buried in the ground to surface in their own camp. Relationships are a mirror of the heart. When the heart is corrupted by pride and cruelty, the mirror eventually shatters, reflecting back the truth that can no longer be hidden. And when you see the friendships they prized crumbling, the partnerships they bragged about dissolving, and the support systems they relied upon weakening, understand God is at work. Justice is unfolding quietly, powerfully, and inevitably. They lose the peace they once boasted about. There is a unique kind of judgment that does not announce itself with catastrophe, but gnaws away silently at the very soul, the loss of inner peace. Those who hurt you may have once appeared unshaken, laughing loudly, boasting of how unbothered they were by the pain they caused. They wore confidence like armor, spoke with certainty, and moved through life as if their actions carried no weight. But when God begins to deal with them, the first place His hand touches is the sanctuary of their mind. Restlessness becomes their constant companion. Sleep, once sweet and effortless, now becomes a battleground of racing thoughts and hidden fears. Moments of stillness, once relaxing, now breed anxiety and dread. They may continue to portray a strong, composed image outwardly, but inside turmoil brews like a storm ready to break. There is no quiet space where their spirit can find refuge, no distraction strong enough to drown out the whispers of conviction, growing louder with every passing day. They may chase after new experiences, relationships, successes, or pleasures to fill the void, but none of it works. What once brought satisfaction now feels hollow. What once distracted now feels meaningless. In the silence of their own mind, They are forced to wrestle with the reality of their choices, and no amount of noise can drown out the divine discontent planted deep within them. This loss of peace is not random, it is surgical. God knows that true transformation often begins when the soul is unsettled, when the comfort that shielded pride is stripped away, leaving only raw vulnerability. Without peace, the proud become fragile. Without peace, the self-assured become desperate. Without peace, the mask eventually cracks. And it is in this silent unraveling that the seeds of repentance can be sown, if they choose to listen. But whether they turn back or harden further, the loss of peace is evidence that divine justice has begun its work. It is a quiet but powerful sign that heaven is not blind and that the harm they inflicted is not without consequence. They will either learn humility in the stillness, or they will be haunted by the very silence they once mocked. Blessings they took for granted begin to slip away. There is a silent sorrow reserved for those who mishandle the blessings God once generously placed in their lives. When someone uses their gifts, influence, or resources to hurt others, to belittle, to manipulate, or to destroy, they are standing on borrowed time. Blessings are sacred trust. They are not shields to justify cruelty, nor weapons to assert dominance. And when they are abused, God, in His divine justice, begins to withdraw His hand, slowly, deliberately, and often without warning. At first, the change is subtle. The prosperity they flaunted begins to lose its luster. Opportunities that once seemed endless start to dry up. The applause that once surrounded them grows faint. The financial security they boasted about becomes fragile. Doors they assumed would always open begin to remain firmly shut. Resources once abundant slip through their fingers like water that refuses to be grasped. It's not immediate devastation, that would be too obvious. It's the slow fading of favor, the quiet erosion of stability, a decline that cannot be stopped, no matter how tightly they try to hold on. The most painful part for them is the confusion. They cannot understand why everything is becoming harder. They are still trying, maybe even harder than before, but the blessings they once took for granted no longer respond to their efforts. They blame circumstances, blame others, even blame God. But deep inside, a small, gnawing voice reminds them, blessings are not rights. They are privileges tied to stewardship, humility, and righteousness. And it is not always about material wealth or status. Sometimes it is the blessing of peace in the home, the blessing of loyal friendships, the blessing of good health, the blessing of favor in the community. When God begins to deal with someone, these blessings start slipping away, piece by piece, until the person is left confronting a landscape that once was vibrant but now feels desolate. What they once viewed as their entitlement is revealed for what it always was: grace. And grace, when abused, is not endlessly extended without consequence. God is patient, but He is also just. He allows the unraveling not out of cruelty, but out of a relentless commitment to righteousness. And when you see those who hurt you starting to lose the blessings they once waved proudly in your face, understand, it is not karma, it is divine order correcting what was out of balance. They feel isolated and misunderstood. There is a special loneliness that comes not from the absence of people, but from the absence of understanding. Those who once used their charisma, their charm, and their influence to weave webs around others often find themselves caught in their own traps when God begins to intervene. The connections they relied upon grow brittle. The conversations they once commanded now seem strained. The acceptance they took for granted slowly turns into suspicion, distance, or cold civility. They find themselves surrounded, yet alone. speaking but not truly heard. It's not simply that people leave them, it's deeper than that. Even those who remain no longer offer the unquestioning loyalty or validation they once enjoyed. Their words fall flat. Their stories don't inspire the same sympathy. The lies they once spun so effortlessly now meet skeptical eyes. They begin to feel invisible in the very circles they once ruled, misunderstood in the communities they once manipulated, and the ache of that isolation is something no outward success can soothe. This feeling of being misunderstood is not accidental, it is not random. It is orchestrated by a hand far greater than human will. God in His justice allows the very thing they weaponized, relationships, influence, presence, to turn against them, not in hatred, but in silence. Where once they could twist narratives to their advantage, now they find no one fully buying their version of events. They may shout louder, demand more attention, fabricate more stories, but the more they strive, the more hollow the echoes become. Isolation, when it comes from divine judgment, is deeply painful because it exposes the heart. Without admirers to mask their faults, without enablers to prop up their pride, they are forced to confront their true selves. And often that confrontation is unbearable. Left to sit with the weight of their own deeds, they begin to realize that no amount of charm, power, or manipulation can recreate the sense of belonging they so casually abused. You may watch from a distance and wonder why they seem to be shrinking, why the bright lights around them have dimmed, why the voices that once cheered them on have grown faint. Know this: God is moving. And one of His most powerful judgments is not thunder and fire, but the slow, suffocating silence that surrounds those who refuse to acknowledge the hurt they caused. In that silence, He calls them not to destroy them, but to give them one more chance to turn, to change, to seek true redemption. Their conscience begins to weigh heavily. There is no prison more suffocating than a guilty conscience. When someone has wronged you, especially without remorse, it may seem for a time as though they are immune to guilt. They walk confidently, laugh freely, live loudly. But appearances are deceptive, and the human heart was never designed to carry the weight of cruelty without consequence. In the stillness of time, when the noise fades and the distractions fall away, the whisper of conscience begins its unrelenting work. At first, it is easy for them to dismiss it. They may justify their actions, blame you for their decisions, or drown out the discomfort with busyness or indulgence. But conscience is not so easily silenced. It speaks not with rage, but with quiet persistence. It replays moments they want to forget. It magnifies the faces they hurt. It awakens them in the early hours of the morning with memories they would rather erase. It weaves itself into their dreams, into idle moments, into the gaps between one distraction and another. They find themselves unsettled without knowing why. Simple conversations remind them of things they would rather bury. Small encounters resurrect forgotten offenses. And no matter how much they strive to act unaffected, the burden grows heavier, the reminders grow louder. The peace they once manufactured shatters like glass beneath the weight of hidden guilt. This internal battle is not random, it is divine. God, in His justice, allows the voice of conscience to rise, not to destroy them, but to draw them toward repentance. He allows the mirror of their own soul to become so clear that they can no longer deny the cracks in their character. He uses their own heart as a witness against their actions, and the heavier the conscience, the more inescapable the consequences become. Guilt is a master teacher. It reveals what arrogance tries to hide. It strips away the layers of justification and forces the person to face the naked truth. You cannot trample another's heart without bearing the scars on your own. You cannot sow betrayal and harvest peace. You cannot inflict pain and expect joy to remain unchallenged in your soul. Even if they never confess outwardly, even if pride locks their lips and blinds their eyes, understand this: if their conscience has been awakened, they are already feeling the pressure of divine justice. They are carrying an invisible weight heavier than any punishment you could wish upon them. And in that hidden arena, in the quiet places no one else sees, the dealings of God are unfolding. Their reputation quietly declines. There is something profoundly humbling about the silent erosion of reputation. Unlike sudden scandals that explode across public view, the divine dismantling of a person's standing happens almost imperceptibly, like a slow leak that eventually sinks a mighty ship. Those who once hurt you may have built their identity on public approval, crafted images of success, power, and influence that dazzled those around them. They may have been praised, admired, even envied, but when God steps in to correct injustice, He often begins by touching what the proud value most, their name. It doesn't happen with fanfare. It rarely comes through loud accusations or dramatic exposures. Instead, it's a quiet shifting of perception. People who once admired them begin to question their sincerity. Subtle doubts creep into conversations where their name is mentioned. Their words lose the weight they once carried. Their presence no longer commands the same respect. Without knowing exactly why, others start to pull back, to reconsider, to distance themselves. And one experiencing this decline often feels it before they fully understand it. They notice the hesitation in others' eyes. They sense the cooling of what were once warm welcomes. Invitations grow fewer, opportunities become scarcer. Their influence contracts slowly, like a tide retreating from the shore, leaving behind nothing but exposed sand and scattered debris. This quiet fall is perhaps the most devastating kind of judgment, because it cannot be fought with force. They cannot demand respect back into existence. They cannot argue their way into admiration. Reputation is a fragile gift, and once the divine winds begin to strip it away, human hands are powerless to stop it. What's even more painful is that they often don't realize the cause. They believe it's jealousy, betrayal by others, or an unfair turn of events. Rarely do they see that it is the natural consequence of the seeds they themselves sowed. Seeds of dishonesty, cruelty, selfishness, and pride. God allows their own actions to become the silent testimony against them, a testimony that speaks louder than any defense they could mount. In the silence of lost influence, they are forced to reckon with who they have become when the applause fades. They are stripped down to their essence, and often that essence is not what they led others to believe. It is a harsh but necessary grace, a moment where the false self dies and the opportunity for real transformation is born. When you notice the proud beginning to lose their platform, when the ones who mocked your pain now struggle to find the attention they once commanded, understand, it is not coincidence. It is not chance. It is the precise, patient, and perfect hand of God at work, removing the masks, humbling the heart, and making way for truth to stand where deception once reigned. They encounter people who treat them the way they treated you. There is no lesson quite so powerful or so humbling as experiencing firsthand the very pain one has inflicted upon another. It is one thing to hear about suffering, to see it from a distance, to dismiss it with excuses and justifications. It is another thing entirely to feel the sting of betrayal, to taste the bitterness of abandonment, to be caught in webs of manipulation, spun by hands they once believed were trustworthy. When God begins to deal with those who hurt you, He often uses a mirror. Not just a figurative reflection, but living, breathing experiences that return their actions to them in a form they cannot deny. They find themselves deceived by someone they trusted, lied to by someone they cared for, betrayed by a confidant they defended. The same feelings they once minimized in your life come crashing into their own. It is a cruel awakening, not orchestrated by human hands, but allowed by divine justice. To taste the sorrow they once served to others. And what makes this lesson especially sharp is the realization that they are powerless against it. They cannot reason their way out of the pain. They cannot manipulate the situation back into safety. They cannot outrun the emotions that now wrap around them like chains. They experience confusion, heartbreak, rage, the very emotions they dismissed in you. In these moments, they are forced to feel what they once caused, and the magnitude of their wrongs becomes undeniable. Often, they do not immediately make the connection. Pride may blind them initially. They might chalk it up to bad luck or other people's flaws, but slowly, as the betrayals mount, as the disrespect accumulates, as the pattern becomes too consistent to ignore, understanding creeps into their heart, and with that understanding comes a sorrow far heavier than mere regret. It is the sorrow of realizing that they are reaping what they have sown. This return of their actions is not revenge. It is not about inflicting pain for the sake of pain. It is about revelation. God, in His wisdom, allows the cycle to complete itself, not to destroy them, but to confront them with the truth they so desperately tried to bury. It is a severe mercy, a final opportunity for humility, for repentance, for transformation. You may never see their tears, you may never hear their apologies, but behind closed doors, when they are alone with the echo of their choices, they will understand, and in that understanding they will face the weight of the very suffering they once ignored in you. They see you rise without them, and it haunts them. There is no sight more humbling for those who sought to break you than witnessing your rise. A rise untouched by their betrayal, a success untainted by their abandonment. They thought they had the power to define you, to confine you to the pain they caused. They believed that their absence would cripple you, that their cruelty would be the end of your story. But when God steps into your life, what they meant for harm becomes the very soil where your destiny grows. Your rise becomes inevitable, not in spite of their actions, but often because of them. And it is this rise, your healing, your strength, your unstoppable spirit, that becomes a mirror they cannot look away from. They see you smiling, not as a mask for your wounds, but as a reflection of true joy. They see you walking forward, not limping from the blows they dealt, but standing taller, stronger, wiser. They see that what was meant to bury you has only made you more resilient, more radiant, more real. This sight haunts them, not because of envy alone, but because it exposes a deeper truth. They were never as powerful as they believed. Their betrayal did not control your destiny. Their rejection did not define your worth. Their cruelty did not imprison your future. In watching you thrive, they are confronted with the failure of their intentions, the futility of their efforts to diminish you. And what cuts even deeper is realizing that you rose without needing them, without begging for their validation, without seeking their approval. You did not stay wounded, waiting for an apology. You did not let bitterness anchor you to the past. Instead, you allowed your wounds to become wisdom, your heartbreak to become fuel, your tears to become prayers, that lifted you higher than they ever thought possible. The more they watch you succeed in your peace, your purpose, your joy, the more they are forced to sit with the consequences of their choices. Not just the loss of you, but the realization that they forfeited the opportunity to stand beside someone chosen, someone resilient, someone destined for greater things. Your rise is not loud or vengeful. It does not need to be. It speaks in the quiet strength of your character, the steady growth of your spirit, the undeniable blessing of your life. It speaks volumes even when you say nothing at all. It reminds them, every time they see your light shining brighter, that they had the chance to walk with you, and they chose otherwise. And now, no matter what they achieve, no matter what they pursue, the absence of your presence in their journey leaves a void they cannot fill. Watching you soar is a lifelong reminder that what they tried to destroy, God chose to exalt. As you reflect on these signs, remember this: you were never forgotten, never abandoned, never overlooked. Every tear you cried, every injustice you endured, every silent heartbreak you carried, it was seen by the eyes of heaven. And though it may have seemed like those who hurt you escaped without consequence, God was never idle. His justice is not rushed, but it is always sure. His timing is not hurried, but it is always perfect. The dealings of God are often quiet but undeniable. He doesn't need to announce his moves with thunder. Sometimes his greatest works are done in the silence, in the slow crumbling of pride, in the steady lifting of the humble, in the unseen battles he fights for your soul. While you were healing, while you were growing, while you were rising, he was also writing a new story over the ashes of your pain, a story not of revenge, but of victory. You are not called to carry bitterness. You are not tasked with seeking revenge. You are called to trust, to let go, to step forward into the abundant, radiant life that God is preparing for you. Every moment you spend in bitterness is a moment stolen from the joy he has destined for you. So lift your head, straighten your back, walk forward, not because your enemies have been silenced, but because your spirit has been freed. Let those who wronged you wrestle with their choices. Let them face the mirrors God holds up before them. Your job is not to watch their downfall. Your calling is to rise so high that the only thing they can see when they look up is the goodness of God covering your life. And always remember this: those who tried to bury you didn't realize you were a seed. And now, by the grace of God, you are growing into something more powerful, more beautiful, and more unshakable than they could have ever imagined. Keep your heart pure, keep your faith unbreakable, and keep your eyes fixed on the one who is not only your defender, but your deliverer. Thank you for joining us on Success Call. If this message spoke to your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more life-changing wisdom and encouragement. Until next time, stay strong, stay faithful, and remember, God's justice is working even when you can't see it.